Welcome.
Hi, everybody. We're going to get started in just a moment. You might want to type in the chat where you're zooming in from.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
Oh, Rhode Island. Hi, Rhode Island. Queens. Oh, Denver, Colorado, and California.
Different
Lovely. Oh, so
And I'm
nice.
not far from you. Oh, I'm not far from you, Lisa. I'm in Fort Lauderdale. Oh, thank you, Diana. Sometimes if I get up and walk around, I'll just whatever. We notice that the same questions come up often. So sometimes hearing it in a different way in a video sometimes helps people. So welcome.
Yeah.
Great to see familiar faces and names.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us. And since this is recording, we can get started soon because if anybody gets here in a few minutes, they will still be able to watch it again on replay. We'll share it to our YouTube channel. Oh, Terry, hello. I might be able to see you with Fort Lauderdale too.
Hey. Okay.
So if you are here, you might already know I'm Dara Collins, and joining me tonight Donna. Okay, there you go.
I'm Donna Miller-Small, the other half of Modern American Canasta. And it's just wonderful to see all the people joining in. Thanks on the congratulations. This is another milestone for us in a journey we never imagined. So
tonight's Zoom, we love to first tell you what to expect so you know what we're going to be talking about tonight. First, we're just going to celebrate that it has been 2 years since we published our book, and it's been an exciting 2 years and what we're looking forward to. One of the most exciting things we're looking forward to is our Canasta Convention in October in Manhattan. So we will give you some more details on that. Then the strategy and rule part of tonight's lesson or Zoom, we're going to go over just some key points of a level playing field. And as Donna will explain more as the night goes on, we recognized when we were playing and talking that there is no long established league like the Bridge contract and the National Mahjong League. So there's a lot of questions about rules. We love to create a level playing field. So we want people to know and recognize whether the most widely played rule is a courtesy special, whether you could pick the pack for a special hand, what happens with scoring when one team gets a special hand, and what the value of special hands are. Then we're going to dive into some really critical, crucial aspects of the game, which is meld bases and wildcard melds and canasta. And then if we have time, we'll do some online gameplay. If not, we'll invite you to watch replays of our game ons, which are on our YouTube channel.
So we're really proud of the accomplishments in the last 2 years, and we want to thank all of you who helped us along the way or who have joined us, even if you're recently. I saw a comment in the chat section. Someone just started reading our book and how much they loved it, and that makes us happy. So a couple, looking backwards, or in the past, we've had great feedback from our readers of our book, like the person in the chat tonight. We have stellar reviews on Amazon and soaring sales, again, that I guess in our wildest dream we hope for. And it's been wonderful meeting players both in person and virtually at our book talks, at classes that both of us teach in different places, and virtual sessions. So through our webinars on important concepts, we connected players and have grown our Modern American Canasta community, our Facebook page. gets new members every day, and that's part of our mission, is to unite our wonderful modern American canasta community. And it's been exciting to host our own canasta camps, where we've taught the basics of canasta. We've had some strategy Zooms, and we've really virtually, through AARP and Kveller, which we just finished teaching, more go-rounds. We've introduced the game to thousands of people throughout the whole entire country. We see people coming from coast to coast, and the attendance and the feedback. Isn't it a wonderful virtual world? So we're really grateful for all that has happened.
So throughout our talks and our YouTubes, a lot of things we put onto our YouTube channel. Additionally, we specifically create content and videos for our YouTube channel. And we have videos, like if there's a certain topic that you're confused about, first of all, you can come to our Facebook group and ask about it. And then also you can go to our YouTube channel. We have a Dealing Out Definition series where we just define key concepts. We have pop quizzes that build. So the first one is just like the really basic information, and then they get harder as you go along. We have a series called Game On, where I always laugh that I never thought we would be gamers. We're sitting there and one of us is sharing our screen for Real Canasta, and we're discussing our decision making. And it's interesting because I think we both have a different style of play. We agree on the rules, but I might be a little bit more of a risk taker, where Donna plays more conservatively. So we discuss our strategies, which differ, which is true, because I think if you asked 20 people, you might get 20 different answers on strategy. We also shared our Jumpstart Your Journey, which if you happen to not already be playing, it's a great video to start with. It's basically kind of our first lesson. We have a lot of strategy videos. We dive into mail base, other videos, as well as replays of a lot of live webinars that we've done.
Okay, so we told you what's been going on. We've got more. Wait, there's more. Yeah, they say that on those whatever infomercials. So our local and national virtual classes will continue. If you and your group are interested in organizing an in-person or virtual presentation or class, email us, and we will continue to do webinars. And if you're interested in organizing a virtual or in-person presentation or classes, we're sharing our email. All of you who are attending should have it, because you got reminders from us. So, and wait, there's more.
Hold on, I'm going to the next page. So we are really excited that we've announced it, but now we could give you more details. We are hosting, and we really never anticipated to be able to do it in Manhattan. We were trying to find somewhere near Manhattan, and we were looking all around, and we found that we can do a Canasta convention, 2 full days of Canasta, connecting our community at the Honors Bridge Club, which is 110 East 55th. And since it's the first one, we are letting everyone be commuters. So you can decide where you want to stay. If you want to stay with family and friends, if you want to get a hotel, make it a romantic trip, make it a guys getaway, a girls weekend. Seating's limited. We open registration. We already have a lot of people registering either for both days, or you could do just Saturday or just Sunday. So you could do either one. Saturday is going to be social gaming. You don't have to have a partner. You could register by yourself and we'll team you up, or you could tell us who your partner is. We're going to start the day with breakfast. Then we're going to have breakfast and coffee. Then we're going to have a presentation where Donna and I keep fine tuning and adding more strategy. So we're going to do an hour and so lesson on strategy. We're going to have a lovely lunch and have social games. We'll have fun prizes and things like that, but it's not going to be, it'll be competitive, but in a fun competition. The next day, we are going to be doing a tournament for cash prizes. So you could choose to do just Saturday, just Sunday, or both days. And there's super early bird pricing. I know I do feel like one of those infomercials. So act now. So you can reserve your time now, or you can wait. Pricing goes up a little bit. We are taking payment by Zelle, just the amount as seen. And if you're going to pay by PayPal, because they hit with so many charges, there's a $4 per payment for PayPal. So there's all this information. If you go to that link right there, bit.ly/CanastaCon25, and anytime you see bit.ly, all that is a link shortener. It just takes a long URL and makes it shorter. It's case sensitive. So the 2 C's have to be capital. Or if you just take your phone now and look at the screen and you focus on that little QR code, if you click on it, it'll open a link and it will take you to the registration page, and that has all the details. So Donna we're working to put together hotel information. If you do want to stay at a hotel, we're working on a block. So Donna, do we want to wait and we'll share more information about that next time, or?
We do have a block now. It's been the hardest thing about putting this convention together has been finding hotels. But we locked in a pricing with a hotel for a block of rooms. When we send you, we'll be sending a follow-up email. We'll have more details in that. You'll see the code. You can, have it in front of you. So yeah, there's more news to come.
Awesome.
So one of the things we're going to talk about tonight is creating did we do the list of what we were sharing tonight?
Yeah, that was the beginning when you were answering questions.
Right. All right. So the first thing and you know what? I just wanted to acknowledge we read all the questions. When you registered, you had an option to put questions in. So I just want to take a minute as we're starting, and we thank you all for taking time to share your questions with us. I just want to acknowledge a few of them, and we will be addressing them. Most of our presentation addresses a lot of what we were asked. A lot of the questions can be found in our book. Somebody asked about scoring. That's kind of a basic. We understand that. We have a wonderful chapter and worksheet about scoring in the book. We have 14 chapters of strategy, and we're getting into depth in some of them. Somebody asked about live play with 4 people of us playing. We can't do that the way Real Canasta is set up, but we are going to do live play the way we can do it, and we have videos, as Dara mentioned. We have a lot of good instruction on YouTube. We have some strategy videos. People asked about aces and sevens and signaling. We have a whole video on that. Graphics. I'm partnered with somebody who could be a graphic designer. So beside all of her other talents. So we have wonderful, wonderful graphics created by Dara. Strategy about going out. We talk about that. Picking the pack. There's videos on, and meld bases. So we have covered a lot of this in our YouTube. We're going to address some of these tonight, but we wanted to honor everybody's questions. So now we can go creating a level playing field. So if you're not familiar with special hands and you are new to the game, they are a level of the game that are predetermined combinations. We are going to share our chart of special hands that comes out of our book. So something is called the courtesy special. And for those of you who don't know, a special is a combination of 14 cards. So you have to pick the 14th card, and it's laid down all at once. It opens the team and it ends the round. And Dara's putting some information in the chat. Only one partner on the team has to open. And what happens, I'm Dara's partner, and I'm set for a special hand, and she opens. So just to back up for a minute, when researching our book, and as Dara talked about in the beginning, the reason we wrote a book is because there's no well-credentialed, long-range governing body, like the American Duplicate Bridge League, like the National Mahjong League. We wanted to document the most widely played rules. That was our mission. That's always been our mission, so we can unite our community to limit confusion. And by the feedback we've gotten, we've been able to start this accomplishment. The more people that play and learn, that you share our book and our suggested rules with, the better the mission is going to be. And we didn't do this in a vacuum. We surveyed players, teachers, and online game creators to document the most widely played rules. So that's what we are presenting to you when we talk about rules. We're going to talk about strategies also. So in a special hand, the most widely played rule permits what we call a courtesy special. And it's also permitted on the game Real Canasta, the online game. So after one member of the team opens, their partner has their immediate next turn to complete a special hand, and that's known as a courtesy special. So you have one immediate time. This round ends, it ends the round, and the score is done as usual. And we're going to talk about that, but the round ends. So wherever your competing team is, their score is calculated. And why is the courtesy special allowed? It's the only turn you are guaranteed that the partner of the player that opened, has 14 cards and hasn't melded anything or picked the pack. Once your team opens, the opportunity to get a special hand ends, other than this one-time courtesy special. By the way, we did a game on where we had the choice of doing a courtesy special, our partner had opened, or picking the discard pile. So we're not going to tell you how it ends, but it was one of the most interesting rounds I think we have ever played. I still remember it.
So another question we get asked a lot is, can you pick the pack for a special hand? And the rule about picking the pack itself is that you must have a pair that matches the top card. So it is a widely and well-established rule that you cannot pick the pack for a special hand. And part of the reason for that is let's say you're going for the straight, which is one of each kind, and all you need is a 9, and someone discards a 9 and it's an empty tray. You don't have a pair of 9s. So you're getting this special hand and picking the pack without a matching pair. So that is the most widely accepted rule. We are not here to say you must follow our rules. We are here to document the most widely played. So when people get together, they can have a calm, informative, I don't want to use the word friendly, a calm discussion, because you could follow rules and be friendly. I'm putting on my mahjong hat here. It is a calm discussion of what rules you play by and recognizing house rules. So we do recognize that there is a relatively new house rule that permits players to pick the pack if all of these conditions are met. The player before them just picked the pack, so there's no cards yet in the tray. They put one card in the discard pile, and that card is the 14th card, which completes their special hand. So that is the kind of exception to picking the pack for a special hand. I know that Don is not a fan of it. I know, when in Rome, when I play in Boca and my mom and I sub in her game, that's what they do. It is accepted on Real Canasta. So there are certain house rules that are gaining traction. This seems to be one that is, but widely, if you understand the logic behind it, it's not something that follows the nuanced rules of Canasta.
Well said, or the logic of how the game is played. And remember, and this is where Dara says, yes, I feel very strongly, special hands are worth thousands of points. They shouldn't be able to be made that easily by one of your competitors who discards a card and has no idea what they could be giving you. So that's my 2 cents. So scoring when your team gets a special hand. When one team gets a special hand, the other team determines their score as if the round ended, because it has, just like a team would be going out when the stock was depleted or ends the round by being able to go out. Points for melds and canastas and threes and penalties are all calculated just the way they would normally be. There is a house rule known as wipeout scoring, and we follow our Facebook posts and questions, and this seems to be coming up recently. So this is timely, and we wanted to address it. So when a special hand is made, the other team's score for this round is 0 if wipeout scoring is a rule for your group. Any points or penalties that would have been awarded are completely wiped out. We believe that wipeout scoring contradicts the widely accepted methods of scoring. And why? We think about these things. We don't just pull reasons out of the air. Why? Players don't need to be as concerned with keeping extra aces and sevens in hand. If you think your competitors are going for a special hand, well, I don't have to worry about that. And players completed canastas and points for their threes and other card counts are ignored. And furthermore, I don't know if we're going on, but I'm going to put this in. Often, and special hands, which happen a lot, and we're going to talk about the value in a minute, happen when the required point count is 155 and 180. Those are the times we see it, because if you don't have those big jokers, you're not going to be able to open with those point values. What if the team that doesn't do a special hand has closed out some canastas and threes? They're probably at a lower point value, and that's going to diminish their points. It's not going to let them accumulate points to even out the balance. And that's what this game does. It's a game of fairness that balances out points, really, for the competing teams.
To continue on that, I mean, 2 things that I thought were very interesting. One person was saying that just as an experiment, one day they tried wipeout scoring and they noticed that their strategy really did change, knowing like, oh, what's the deal if I keep a couple extra aces, because then maybe I'll get them. And if they get a special, then I won't get penalized. And then in our Facebook group, somebody was saying that they just needed 300 points to win. They got them. They closed a canasta. They were going to win. The other team got a special. So then they got 0 points and didn't win the game. So it really does. And if you like that, if you believe in wipeout scoring, we're not telling you how you should play, but we just feel like not using wipeout and ending the round as usual is more in line with scoring. And when we teach and we teach very sequentially, we always say, when you get to scoring, the little light bulbs are going to connect the dots for you, because scoring really does reinforce the rules. So here, this would be an example of it not reinforcing. So now we're going to move on, and we are going to talk about the value of special hands. So a lot of people have their own sheets of what special hands they recognize. In our book on chapter 17, we have a point value and the special hands that we agree on. Before starting, you should have whatever you use. If you have the cutout from our book, if you have another paper, just make sure you are all looking at the same chart and the same value. And when we went through the book, and the reason we came up with different scoring, and not that Real Canasta, I mean, we are not affiliated with them at all. Not that they're our guiding star, but we do agree with them on a lot of rules. For special hands, we have some differences. We were testing and keeping track in an unscientific study of when we played both online and in person, tracking different special hands. And not only was the zip code most frequently made, but it's the one where I could be sitting and wait for any of like 3 cards. And that makes it so much more common. And as much as the first thing I do, so this kind of is a contradiction, when I get my cards dealt, the first thing I do, and maybe it's because I switched from playing, and I still play, but mahjong to canasta, the first thing I look at is how many cards I have towards a special hand. It's just innate. However, I recognize that canasta is a partnership game. So if we value zip code at 2,500 and it's made that frequently, it really doesn't use the partnership aspect of the game as much. So we don't feel like it should be the full 2,500 and shouldn't be scored the same as some much more difficult hands that have a 2,500 value. And the other thing that we changed the value of in comparison is we don't believe that any one hand, since it's a partnership game, should end the entire game. So we don't have any one special hand that completely is worth 8,500 points.
Right. Okay.
And by
we're
the
gonna
way,
talk-
thank you to somebody that texted me that it's page 17, section 17 on page 46. So thank you.
uh, I just want to back up 1 minute on the zip code hand. When I started teaching, there was no zip code hand. Zip code hand, I think particularly Dara and I met during COVID. So it's before COVID, after COVID, many of our life events. So the zip code hand came in somewhere around COVID. And my guess is whoever created the hand didn't know how easy it was going to be and how frequently it was going to be made. They just said, let's give it 2,500 points, just like the pairs hand. So my guess is that was the thought at the time, but that's not what played out in reality. And since this is a game of scoring is important and values are important, and Dara explained why we changed the scoring on a zip code hand to 1,500. That's our hope. Because why should somebody have 3 times the chance of making a zip code hand and getting 2,500, and someone who really struggles for pairs get the same amount? So here's our chart of special hands. Dara, can we blow it up a little bit?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay. So just briefly, and special hands are a real important aspect of the game. When you get to 155 and 180, if you don't have those big jokers, and probably 2 of them, you're not going to be able to open unless you get a ton of 2s and aces. So we're going to go over this briefly. I think we have a YouTube video. It's going to be on this video. Zip code is 4 of a kind, 3 of a kind, 3 of a kind, pair. It does allow wild cards, and we have noted in their special hands where wild cards can be used. We have pairs, and we analyze the point value, and we have adjusted them to what we think the fairest values are. There's pairs with without wild cards. They're 2,500. No wild cards, any 7 cards that are not included. And if you're using wild cards, it's like wild card, joker, 2-2. Pairs with wild cards, AKA Boca, guess where that came from? If you have wild cards, you must have pairs of aces and 7. So here's an example. I don't want to spend too much time on this. It's in our book. It's going to be on the YouTube upload of this. Pairs of both wild cards. And the other hands are not made as often. There's a garbage hand worth 3,000 points. The straight, one of everything. The rest of them, I don't want to spend time on. You'll be able to review them. And the one thing I did want to mention is we use Real Canasta as our demo and the place that we feel most comfortable playing personally and when we do virtuals. Our special hands differ from theirs, not only point wise, there are a couple of extra hands that they have, and you can see them on their settings when you go in that we don't have here. Thank you, my sister Carol Levin, for pointing that out. Okay.
And one other note about special hands, when Donna just mentioned that if you have wild cards, they have to match. For the point of a special hand, a 2 and a joker are independent cards. Opposite that is when you're doing a wild card meld or a wild card canastas, 2s and jokers are just merged together, and they can count. If nothing to do with special hands, if you're doing a meld of wild cards, you don't need a separate pure if you have enough points. So it's kind of interesting that for melds, they're considered wild cards. For special hands, they're considered 2 wild card, joker wild card. So it's just something to keep in mind. So now we're going to go over meld base, which is something we had a lot of questions on in our registration. And other than aces and sevens, it's probably one of the things we get asked about the most. So before we even get into the definition, each meld must always consist of 3 or more cards. When you're opening, it could be 2 natural and up to 2 wild. After you open, any player can put a meld of 3 or more cards down if it's not a closed canasta. When you can add a wild card to any meld, a new meld or an existing meld, is governed by what is known as the meld base. So for some of you, this is just a review. You could go get a cup of coffee and come on back, but we're just going to quickly go over this because this is really important. The meld base is the number of natural cards you need, and we have it capital letter, underline in green, after opening, before adding wild cards to existing melds and new melds. Now, I've always played meld base of 5. Donna started playing more recently meld base of 5, and that's how we both teach. When you go online, it will ask you, what is your meld base? And it'll give you choices, 2, 3, or 5. We find that 5 is the most challenging. A lot of players then say, well, then at the end of the round, I have a hard time figuring out what to do with wild cards, or I'm stuck with wild cards. And we have a whole video just on strategy because of your meld base. And if you're stuck with them, all the players are stuck with them. Everybody has that same dilemma. So when you're deciding the meld base, it is something that all 4 players have to agree on the same meld base. One team can't be 3 and the other team 5. So everybody has to agree on the meld base, since it governs placement of wild cards, and then everything waterfalls from that. It really impacts many aspects of the game. Regardless of whether you set the meld base at 2, 3, or 5, it doesn't change that the maximum number of wild cards you could use per meld is 2. And as an aside, before we get there, okay, so yeah, we're going to get to that now.
Okay. Just answering questions in chat. So if you play with a meld base of 3 or 5, then this, by rule, needs to be consistent throughout the entire game, not just the round, the game. With a meld base of 3 or 5, you would not be able to end the round with a pair and a wild card, since that would not be playing with a meld base of 3 or 5. It would be a meld base of 2. So we've heard about this. We've had questions about this, and you want consistency. If you've got a rule, and a meld base, as Dara mentioned, should be discussed. That's one of the variables of the game. We don't tell you what meld base to have. We say, pick a meld base. We teach, when I first started to teach, there was no meld base of 5. That's one of the things that crept in during COVID also. So this game does transition, and the 2 big variables are what meld base you're going to use and what are your special hands. So just as a little side note, putting 2 cards down with a wild card doesn't hold to the meld base of 3 or 5 to end a round.
And I think that really gained traction from tournament play when people wanted to be able to end a round quickly. So there really isn't a need for it I mean, I don't think there's a need for it in tournament play at all, but there's really not a need for it in social play either.
Right, and this goes back years ago, though. I mean, people played that way. You
Yeah.
know, they didn't even think of, if you play with Aunt Sally, who's been playing for 40 years, she's not going to know what a meld base is. So you're going to have to describe it to her.
And what's interesting is everybody wants to get the bonus of the 100 points and be able to end the round. And yes, there's a benefit of ending the round if your opponents are going to be penalized, if they haven't closed canastas, if they have threes and they haven't. But the 100 points for closing the round really isn't that big in the scheme of things. So being able to close it just with 2 in a wild really, to us, doesn't make sense. So now we're going to talk about general rules about wildcard melds and wildcard canastas. So this is another area where Donna and I kind of see it a little bit differently in strategy, not rule. So twos and jokers are both wild cards. They can be melded together. If you open with a wild card meld, you still must have your required point count. So just because you have 4 twos doesn't mean that you could open. You still need to get to either 125, 155, or 180. If you need to reach 155 and you only have 5 twos, you could use a pure meld assist. So you could use 4 kings or 3 jacks or whatever to reach your required point count. Once you meld wild cards, you are committed to closing that wild card canasta if you can. So you can't, and we read, because we bought a lot of books about classic canasta when writing our book. I loved the expression, you cannot abandon your wild card meld. Wait for a plane to fly over. Sorry about that. So if you have a wild card meld and it is not a canasta yet, people say, well, why would you want to add a wild card somewhere else? Well, let's say you have a lot of threes and you're going to get penalized if you don't close a canasta, and you have 6 tens and you only have 1 more wild card, but in order to close that wild card meld, you need 2 or 3. You can't use that wild card to close the tens because you haven't finished your canasta yet, your wild card canasta yet. So that's just one of the rules of making a wild card meld.
Okay, so there are some differing points of view on the strategy with wildcard melds and canastas. And as we really thought about this and put this presentation together, we realized how strategic wildcard melds can be, and really wanted to address this. So as you all probably well know, there's a reward ranging from 2,000 to 3,000 points for completing a wildcard canasta. And there's a risk of minus 2,000 if your team doesn't complete the canasta. So here's some of the considerations when melding wildcards. Can you open with mixed and pure melds, or is the wildcard meld your only option for the required point count? What are both teams' required point counts to open? How many wild cards do you have in your hand and might you meld with? How many wild cards can you count in other melds and other canastas that would be of your competitors? I mean, you could put down wild cards in the middle of a round too, but I saw that done, I think, once, and it's not the best practice. If mixed canastas are on the board and you don't know how many wild cards, assume there would be 2, which is the maximum. This is a game of counting to 7, folks. And with wild cards, we're doing the same thing, counting to 7 to make a canasta and counting your points. What is your team's score and what's the opponent's score? This could be a Hail Mary where you decide, gee, I want to go for 2,000 points or more. And, you know, that's a thought also. If your opponents have opened, do they have melds that meet the meld base? The 5 cards, if you're doing a 5-card meld base. and maybe they haven't added wild cards. So that's going to tell you there's wild cards in the deck to pick. I also want to say something before we move on, which we haven't talked about tonight. We almost always talk about this. Folks, this is a game of nuanced decision making, and here are perfect examples. And your nuanced decisions are going to be guided by the variables. What is your score? What is your competitor's score? What part of the round are you in? The beginning, the middle, the end? What part of the game are you in? So that's going to guide you here. I would say also with the strategy of wildcard melds, when you are needing, or you or your opponents are needing 155 or 180 points, if you're sitting with a lot of jokers, you know they're probably going for a special hand. I think I opened with 3 jokers when I think we both teams needed 180. I knew they wouldn't get there, not with me having 3 big jokers. So I knew they were probably going for a special hand. That was guiding my strategy. And I see we've got, we're gonna stop and answer some questions too. Dara's answering them in the chat, but just some other pieces of the way I think and what I could offer to you. I think we're ready for the next slide, Dara.
So the reason I was saying we differ on strategies, I feel that Donna uses a wild card as kind of like a last resort ditch if she can't meld otherwise. With that first question, can you open with mixed and pure? She would rather assign her wild cards to 10s and jacks and aces and do a pure and open the traditional way. Where if I have, and somebody in the chat said, would you ever open with less than 5? If I have 5 wild cards and you can't talk, only the cards and the discards can do the talking, but you can sometimes get a sense of what the other team and what your partner has. So if I have 4 or 5 and I have a feeling that my partner has because of what's on the board, what's not on the board, I will open with just wild cards. I mean, if you close it and you get anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000, that's worth 4 or 5 or more pure canastas. So when you look at it that way, sometimes the minus 2,000 that you get from not completing it might be worth it. We once had, my husband and I had such an exciting round one time where we opened, I think he opened with wild cards, knowing he wasn't going to complete them, but it gave him entree to pick the pack, which was like almost all the whole deck. And it was just so many points that offset that 2,000. And then it just so happened that I had 3, like it was just one of the, so when you say canasta could be an exciting game, it could be a very exciting card game. So that's
Jerry, that was a perfect example of a nuanced decision that David made. He saw how many cards were in the discard pile. And yes, sometimes you open because you can't do anything else. And at least that gives you entree to the discard pile to play the game. So again, that's where these nuanced decisions come in.
And then this is interesting. Maybe everybody could answer in the chat. If you open with 4 wild cards and there's a big pack, is there a number of cards in the pack that it has to meet that you would pick the pack versus trying to get another wild card? Like if there's only 4 cards and I can match it, I'm not giving up another pick to get a wild card. Maybe if there's 20, maybe I'll do it. But my mom has a friend that she plays with. She'll open with 4 wild cards. Doesn't matter if there's 2 cards in the pack, she'll pick it. And somehow she always winds up closing wild cards. So her strategy doesn't seem the most strategic, but she's very lucky with closing wild card melds. So it just depends.
And you talked about lucky. This is a game of luck and skill. I think there's more skill than there is luck compared to mahjong, but there still is an element of luck in what you're going to pick.
So I'm just seeing that since we started at 7, we might go overtime. So we understand at 8:15, if you need to leave, this will be recorded and you could watch whatever you miss on YouTube because we still have a lot to go over.
Okay.
So this is one of the questions, and it really surprises us that we get the most from experienced players. So when you're learning how to play, you know, there's the base score and there's the card count. Scoring has two separate, each round has two separate baskets. And it's easy to remember basket because canasta is basket in Spanish. So what we notice is a lot of people ask us, well, aren't you double counting? And you really have to think of them as mutually exclusive. You have your base score, which is your value of your mixed canastas, your pure canastas, your threes, whether they're added, ignored, or subtracted, and then any other penalties or bonuses if you got pure aces, sevens, wildcard canastas. So that's one basket. Then you take the threes out, we're done with the threes, but all those cards, even if you were penalized, even if you had three aces, so you had minus 1,500, those are still part of your card count, minus 20 points each. You closed a pure ace canasta, that's 2,500 points. You still get 20 points for each of those aces in your card count. So this is something that a lot of people get confused with the card count and are surprised when they get into it because they feel like they're double counting. But if you just think of it as two completely separate baskets, and hey, it's almost Easter, so they look like Easter baskets. So the card count includes the value of all your cards in hand and on the table, depending on if you completed one canasta or not. The cards in your hand are always negative, no matter what. If no canastas are made, everything is negative. This includes cards in canastas. This includes cards not in canastas. This includes cards in the hand that the team was penalized for. If one or more canasta was made, all the cards on the table are positive and cards in hand are negative. So let's say your team was penalized for not completing a wild card meld. If you had no canastas, those wild cards are subtracted in the card count. If you had one or more, they're added. Another example, your team is penalized for sevens in hand. Those sevens, let's say you had 4 sevens, that's still 20 points negative in your card count. So this is something that a lot of people just kind of overlook when they get to card count. So if you're not on Facebook or if you're not in our Facebook group, here's your invitation. We create different graphics to help kind of reinforce rules that sometimes just seeing it differently and visually will help. A lot of questions we get are when can I use aces with wild cards and when can I pick the pack and other things. So it sounded funny, but for Mahjong, I had to do a chart on how to read a chart. So where the intersection is, can you open with aces from your hand? If you open with aces from your hand, can they be mixed or pure? They can be either. If you're going to open with pure, you later cannot add any wild cards. If you open with aces from your hand when you're opening, this is the only time that entire round you can add twos and jokers. Other than that, if you put pure aces down, the whole rest of the round, it has to stay pure. Next line. What if you open with aces on top and you pick the pack? In that case, the entire round, aces have to stay pure. What if you pick the pack with an ace on top, but you already opened? So you have aces already down and there's an ace on top and you have a pair of aces. It has to stay as it was. So if you had a mixed ace meld and you only had one wild card on it, you can add another wild card. If it was pure, you could pick the pack, but you could only keep it pure. And finally, what if you want to start a new meld of aces after you or your partner already opened? It has to stay pure. If you do this, there'll be a penalty if it's not completed. And there was a question in the chat about what do we mean by penalty for incomplete canastas? You cannot end the round and you will get penalized if you have sevens, pure aces, and wild cards on the table as melds that you do not complete. So those are penalty canastas if you don't complete them by the end of the round.
Okay, so I want to just stop for a second. I've been typing away, answering some questions in the chat, Dara. So we had a good question about discarding wild cards. It is allowed, but you have to have only wild cards in your hand. And that would likely happen towards the end of a round. If you have put down pure cards and left yourself with wilds, that is not allowed. Say you had 2 10s in your hand, you melded them and it left you with 2 wild cards. You'd have to take back the 10s. It has to be only when you have wild cards in your hand, and it would be likely towards the end of a round, particularly if you're playing with a meld base of 5. So if that would happen, and say I only had 2 wild cards in my hand, I would discard 1, and that would go horizontal on the discard pile. Everything else gets put on top of that, and if somebody wants to pick that discard pile, they can only do it up till the wild card. It is not being able to be picked. And you know, it's an old term, frozen. Somebody asked, does it freeze the pack? It does in essence, but not the way freeze used to be. I don't think I've seen it happen in my play or even online play, but I did, you know, that is something that has come up, and wanted to answer that question. The other thing that we're getting several questions about the convention. We're going to share more details in a minute. The first day is strategy. It's going to be different. It's a very dense strategy presentation. We put it together for the last strategy class that we did, I believe, and we have built on our strategies. The more we think about strategy and present strategies, the more layers we find. So it's a wonderful piece of strategy information. And of course, we will be answering questions. So yes, it's going to be a rich strategy presentation the first day of the convention. There's going to be social play that day, and we will both be there for questions. The second day is a tournament. And anyhow, so I did want to answer.
We have a lot of questions. We have a lot of questions about wild cards. So in our discussion, the most widely played is you cannot, anytime you hear about freezing the pack with 3s, that's old canasta. 3s are never discarded unless it's to end the round face down, and then it could be any card. During the play, you cannot discard a wild card unless you start with all wild cards and you pick a wild card. So the entire time you only have wild cards. If you discard a wild card, it's turned sideways, and anytime somebody picks the pack after that, they get the cards above the wild card. And we did discuss this with the Real Canasta. They do not have it programmed that way, but they did agree with, you know, so who knows if maybe in the future, yes, Unreal, Vicky said it does not. Yeah, the pack, I don't think you could pick the pack with wild cards on Real Canasta. If somebody puts down a 2, I don't think you could pick it with a pair of 2s. That was my understanding. I think they said no to that. I think they said that you they did not have it, that it freezes the pack, but you can't pick it. So that's something, I mean, to me, it's kind of a gimmick if you say you can pick it, because really, if you pick the pack with wild cards, you have to meld wild cards. And the only time someone's going to have wild cards only in their hand typically is going to be at the end of the game. So to me, it's kind of like, yes, and I understand we love the nuanced decisions and all the little minutia. So I love answering questions about anything, but I don't think it's that important in the scheme of the game of worrying about picking the pack with wild cards or freezing the deck. So we're not ending, but we just wanted to run through this. So in case anybody has to leave, but thank you so much for being, this is our little visual of our Canasta hotline. And our book is available on Amazon, as well as teacher and group discounts if you want to buy more than 8 copies. So we love hearing from everyone, and you have our email address. And I am going to stop sharing so I could switch over to Real Canasta.
Oh, somebody asked about sharing the convention details. Uh, you know what,
We
we're
should
gonna
send
send,
yeah.
we're gonna send we're gonna send a follow-up email, and the convention details will be there. It's on our Facebook group also. We post it a lot. So you can certainly find us. While Dara's putting up, we're gonna do some play on Real Canasta. Does anybody else have any questions we haven't answered? We really tried to honor your questions. That's what we're here for. You can always email. We have a very active Facebook group, and you can, my partner works 24/7, I think. She probably sleeps with a computer or phone in her hand. We answer questions on our Facebook group very quickly, thanks to my partner. I sleep 8 hours a night, but I do try to check in and cover when she's not available.
Can you see my screen? Does it say
Yeah.
Real Canasta? Okay.
Yeah, so take it away, Dara.
So if you haven't played on Real Canasta, if you go to our YouTube channel, we actually did a tutorial, but just a real quick overview in case this is new to you. Imagine you are looking down at the screen. When we first did this for an online class, people were like, what are those blue things on the side? And we realized we had to take a step back to explain how it's set up. So under where it says press pick, those are our cards. That's us. And then computer 1, 2, and 3, everything. The one thing about Canasta that's easy is everything's clockwise. They deal the cards. You go into this little wheel right here. That is your settings. Here's where you could see their special hands. Here's where there's options. If you haven't played in person yet, you might not want to put auto meld 3 down, because then it becomes a crutch and you're used to it taking your 3s out of your hand for you. You might want to turn that off. So when you play in person, you remember to replace your 3s. Since I'm used to doing that, I let it do that for me. The only reason also you might want to turn it off is if you are going to have one of each card and have a straight, it will remove the 3 from your hand right away, and you won't be able to go for a straight. The other thing you might want to turn off, because that's not in live play, is where it says show current count. That shows this count as the round progresses. So usually,
Dara,
yeah.
Dara, I just want to jump in for a second. Just to clarify some things about Real Canasta. We love and respect the Real Canasta platform and game. We don't always align with their rules, but we still love and care about them. Their special hands are going to differ from us. I think a couple of their rules are going to differ from us.
They did edit a lot of their rules based on the wording that we gave them. They made some
Right.
changes. Yeah.
And we do have, we do have some wonderful communications with them. My sister asked a really good question. How does playing online differ than playing in person? You're not going to know who you're playing with. A lot of times, if I want to jump on and play, I just play with the bots. Or I meet my sister online, or I meet Dara online. And you can, get your buddies and meet up online. When you play with strangers, you don't know how they play. And remember, there's no communication. And this came up. You don't know what they're going to do with signaling with aces and sevens. Carol reminded me, she looks at the points. If people are seasoned players and they're playing a lot on Real Canasta, most of the time they're probably going to signal. Dara and I both feel you can type in the chat and ask them, particularly if it's the beginning of a game. You're not supposed to be able to communicate. And, sometimes you'll get somebody that says you're not allowed to talk. This is a partnership game. And also, folks, when you're playing live, talk to your partner and discuss what your strategies are, what your styles of play are. This game is based on bridge. That's a partnership game. You're going to watch what your partner's throwing, and you're going to have an understanding. Dara and I both feel we don't discard sevens, but we have some exceptions that we have agreed on. One is right after we open, if we only have a few cards. The other is if it's a big pack and we might be defending it, but not the 5th on the pack. Definitely, we're going for special hands. A lot of the the rules.
She's on the kazoo.
Can you mute everybody, Dara, and I can
Yeah,
unmute
I'm
if.
going through to try to, yeah.
I don't know, it's so clear.
Please, folks, will you mute yourself?
Oh, okay. Can you hear me? Is it me?
I think it's Cindy.
I just muted. I think I found the person. So anyhow, that's just a couple of things to talk about the difference of what you're going to see and what happens here and how online play is different, but it serves a purpose.
Yeah.
Okay, Dara, take it away. So what have we opened with?
So we have a lot of threes right away. We already have 4 threes. We have, so if you see when I click, if you don't play in Real Canasta yet, when you raise the cards, it shows in this little maroon box your current count. But make sure you're not, and you can't mismeld on Real Canasta because you are putting the cards face down, which is a good tip to do when you're in real games. Don't let anyone see your cards until you know you have a pure and you have the points. Then you're not mismelding. But always make sure that you have, like, let's say I had a third joker or a third 2. I don't have another group of cards that I could hang that on. So just make sure when you're raising the cards that it goes with something. So here now I do have another pair. So I would still be only at 120, even if I used all of those cards. So when somebody was asking about strategy, we didn't really go into that many detailed strategies on this. One of the things we talk about as strategy is deciding about what are good discards, what are safe discards, so it's the first card. You can't, not that we would, you can't discard an ace or a 7, which is interesting because if you were dealt 3 aces, you're stuck with them until your next turn, your first, it comes back to you. I normally would discard a single low card to start, but since these are pairs, I'm going to keep them. I actually would just discard the queen because I feel, and this is not scientific, this is just Dara on human behavior. I feel that even though 8s through king are all 10 points, I believe because of other card games, people think that jack, queens, and kings are more valuable. So I get rid of my single jack or queen over my 8 because I feel like that's something somebody might throw later. That's nothing scientific. That's just my take on it. So right now we have it on medium speed, just so everybody could watch it go by. You could select slow, medium, or fast when you start your game. So we still don't have, if we had 5 more points, we could open by picking the pack because we would have more, well, we'd have the same as a Talon. But so now that's interesting. So I could put my jacks up and I could keep, I love keeping pairs of low cards because when the other team hasn't opened yet, that's what they're going to throw. So I know what Donna's going to say. Donna's going to say, let's open, or is she going to say, wait to try to get an ace?
I'm going to say it's early. There's only 4 cards on that discard pile. I'm typing some answers in the chat, but I'm paying attention. And I would wait. This is the time because aces are so beautifully used with wild. And I'd say wait, Dara.
So it's interesting because the reason that Donna's saying wait is because she wants to get an ace to have a pair of aces so we could meld them with wild cards. Or I wait because I want to pick the pack to open. So it's the same result, but for a different reason. So I'm going to throw the one single card we have other than an ace or a 7. So now let's say we got a 5, a 6, a jack, or a king. With 8 cards in the pack, would you pick the pack? I mean, we didn't, but if you did.
Maybe with 8 cards, I might.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Got
So
another one.
the funny thing is I love going for special hands, but when I see a joker, I usually realize that, that's going to be a hard get to get.
Because there's only 3 more floating around, right?
I'm definitely not breaking up my 3 of a kind, my pure kings. Would you get rid of a 5 or a 6, or would you open now?
I think I would open. What would you do?
I would open because if we throw a 7 at this point, our partner would know that we're not signaling so that we need to use a lot of cards, and that's why we're getting rid of a 7. If we just threw a 7 now as a single card, they might think that we have 2 7s in hand. So,
And the bots are programmed mostly.
yeah,
if you
they
throw a
never mess up
7,
with counting.
they're gonna think it's a signal.
Yeah, so preference between the 6 or the 5?
Neither one has been discarded, has it? Whatever.
And then now, this is where it comes to having a male base of 5. If you had a male base of 3, there's no need to put that 2 down. With a male base of 5, would you add the other 2? Or would you keep it in hand just to have another card and see what your partner does?
We don't have a lot of cards.
Yep.
Um,
And
yeah.
I do agree with throwing the 7.
Why not the ace?
Interesting. I feel like the ace is a card that the other team would want to pick and use if they use aces and they open. Where a 7,
true.
they're not going to
Okay,
put
they
out.
could be used. Okay, I get that. Yeah, an interesting point.
So,
Oh, I have a question.
sure.
Are you gonna open with aces clean by taking the pack? Otherwise, you're not gonna take the pack on an unmelded hand.
Right now, we're just going to keep 2 in hand. So and actually no one opened with aces. So now
Right.
both teams are going to be keeping aces in hand. And the only way we would put aces down is if we pick the pack knowing we would get all 7.
Our
That wasn't
partners
my, that
Yeah,
wasn't
we're
my
not gonna
question.
meld, we're never gonna meld clean aces. Unless
Right, no, I
Yeah.
understand that. The lady before asked why not throw the ace, and you said in case the other person was going to pick it.
I
I'm
didn't mean
saying,
right
No,
then. I'm
not
sorry.
then.
I didn't mean the
Okay.
next pick. I meant in the pile, there would be an ace.
gotcha.
So right
Eh.
now in the pile, computer 3 has our 7, but and it doesn't matter. I mean, the point is mute because they didn't open with aces or 7s. But if computer
Correct.
1 had opened with mixed aces, they would now have a card to use, where a 7 doesn't help them at all in that
Okay.
sense. So Donna, let's see. So they have 8s, 10s, 9s, and 4s. So would you get rid of the 9?
Yeah,
And
probably.
right now you wouldn't put the 6 out yet.
No, it doesn't, it's not gonna do anything.
Yeah.
The only thing is, they've picked a pack. Would we put maybe in the next go round? Well, if our partner had 2 of them, they would have picked the pack. Do we lay one down in case they've got another and we could try to make a match with the canasta? And that's a whole strategy of when you lay down cards. And we talk about that in our strategy presentation.
So here we could try to bait them and put a 5 down.
Huh. You mean
I mean,
bait
their computer 1 is low. I mean, if they close those 4s, they're ready to end the round.
Yeah, we don't want to strip our hand. You put the 6 down. You know, we're in a tough position.
And at any time you could look back 3 cards, so that doesn't help us
that's
at all.
Yeah, I don't know. What are you thinking? The queen or the?
I mean, we could put the 3 5s down. The only problem with that is if we then meld the queen, you don't want to set yourself up that your
the
only
aces.
choice is throwing an ace, especially since they just picked the pack. So maybe
Yeah.
we discard a 5 and see if maybe it comes back to us. Maybe they'll throw us a 5.
Why not the queen? You mean you bait them with the 5?
I'm saying it by because it's
Yeah.
the queen, yeah.
Yeah, bait them with the 5. Yeah, because putting 3 5s down isn't going to do anything unless their partners match with us.
Right. And it's interesting because the way that, so they have 5, so they're not gonna give us a 5.
No.
Well, that's good. At least maybe we'll get to enough 6s.
Yeah.
So now We already put 1 5 down, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, here's hoping that,
Yeah. He's only got 2 cards, this
Yeah.
guy. They're not looking to pick the pack. They're looking to get out of dodge.
oh,
Oh, our partner did though. What did he throw him?
a
Oh, we
jack.
got the 6s, threw him a jack. Well, good.
And somebody had asked, how do we keep track of aces and sevens? So what I do is I think of it as a 2-digit number. I think of the aces as the tens column and the sevens as the 1 column. Somebody else said they do it the same but opposite way. But the way that do, so every time an ace is thrown, I say 10, 20, 30. Every time a 7, I say 1, 2, 3. So if there were 3 aces and 2 sevens, it would be 32. And then every time the pack is picked, you start over. So now I want to close the kings.
Mhm.
I want to add a 5.
Oh, we had that 5 still.
I
We can
want
put the
to add
2
a
on it.
wild. And
Excellent.
now jacks are closed.
Jacks are closed. Yep.
All right.
Boy, we really got lucky with our partner being able to have, they were sitting there with those pairs of
And
jacks.
look at how the round changes so much. I mean, they were just taking control of the whole round, and now it's such an even round.
Does their partner have anything bad? Oh, 3 aces.
Oh,
Yikes.
goodness. Can't believe our partner got stuck. Oh, well.
That's where aces,
Yep.
can, you know, picking the pack. All right, let's do one more round.
Yeah. So we don't have any pures yet, but I'm just looking to see what we have. Wow, they're throwing 7s already. All right, so there's 1 in the pack. I'm going to throw a single card. See, I'm surprised the bot picked the pack so close to the end of the round. Because usually, and you know, the
He
developers,
hadn't closed out a canasta, maybe.
yeah, the developers did say that they program them to play like average players. There's some bots that are more skillful than others.
And they took a chance so we could close out canastas
Yep.
and not get wiped out on 3s, and didn't know that, look at them opening again there.
Yeah.
Talk about
These are a
luck,
lot of-
folks. All
Talk about a
right,
lot of cards to open, my goodness.
look at that, yes. Well, they had 2 2s, but they, you know, 2 2s is 40 points, so, and they're putting down cards. In our strategy presentation, we do talk about, a whole section of when to lay down cards.
So unless we broke up 8 or 9, we don't have any other single cards that they have.
But they threw a 10.
I mean, I guess 6.
Yeah, we throw the 6.
They might pick it, but
He doesn't have a lot of cards in hand.
yeah.
Remember, he had to put a lot down. Depends what he got in that talon. Got 9s.
So anything that there's 5 cards is a safe. They can't pick the pack. Because then there would be more than 7, and you could never have more than 7 in a canasta. So now they protected their 3s. They won't be negative for their
They
3.
matched with 9s. Yes, I saw a check. Yes. Waiting to put 5 cards down so you can pick the pack. You could put 3 and keep 2 in your hand also, and that might bait the opponents. So, yes.
So if we were close to a special hand and we didn't have that joker, I would keep the 9s for, if I had 2 jokers, I would keep
Right.
the 9s as a pair, because you can use a pair in a special hand. Right now, computer 1 is actually in a really bad position.
Mhm.
They can't do anything until computer 3 puts them in the position to close a canasta, because all they're going to be doing is picking and discarding, because they can't end the round without 2 canastas. So
Not
since,
a good thing to do.
since we're far from a special because we need a joker and a 2, I'm going to get rid of the 9 because we can't, it's a dead card. We can't,
Right,
we could
right,
use
right.
it in a special, but we can't use it to open.
Yep.
So you're going to see them possibly getting rid of cards that they could otherwise meld because they can't do anything.
Gives us more time to, well, boy,
We
This-
can't get a break here. We need,
take it a
we need
break.
an 8, a king, a 4. So now if they have a 5 or a wild, they can end the round, but
Yeah. We may get snookered here.
yeah.
Yes. Holding cards in hand are important. You try to hold cards so you're not forced to throw cards. Excellent, excellent strategy. We agree. This was
Now,
shared in the chat.
It's funny because if we got a 2 and a joker, a 2, a joker, and an ace, we'd have to get rid of some of these, would give us a special hand. Normally, I would keep the jack for points, but if we got an 8 or a king, whatever, we'd have enough, and they
Yeah.
can't pick anything because they
Yeah.
only have 1 card.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, we need a pure.
yeah. Why do I feel like yay, partner?
I mean, sometimes the partners do come through for us.
Oh, and see, they
They
use
have aces.
which is, yep.
Okay.
So now
maybe
this will
they'll-
be interesting. We only have 2 3s. This is where and since we're talking, I'm not doing a good job of counting aces and 7s, but this is where you say, if they throw.
We got the 4s, Dara.
So there's only 8 cards. So we would be stuck with 7s because the first card they threw was a 7. So if we had 6 or 7 3s and we'd be stuck with not completing a canasta, I would say, yes, let's pick it.
Can we match them with anything? We can match them with the kings.
With
and
the
close
kings,
out
we'll
a-
close 1 canasta at least.
And keep us from getting blitz. It's probably the smart, with this guy only has 1 card. He can.
He could end the round.
Yeah, so it's probably right that you're paying attention with the 7s and we just cover our bases here and not look for problems. Yay, and we get. both
Normally, I
that one.
wouldn't put the ace down, but I'm gonna because they only have 1 card left.
Right,
And then, yeah, get rid of the jack.
and at least we match with kings with their partner. Let's see if they're gonna lay down anything else. Hmm. Hmm. Nada, nada, nada. We could
Wow.
throw it. Yeah, doesn't matter what you throw, he's only
Kind
got
of,
one.
kind of not an exciting round. Oh, now they
Yeah.
can.
Sorry, it's not more exciting, folks. There's more exciting on our game on YouTube, but look, this is the deal. What's the deal? This is how it was dealt.
And what's
Yeah.
amazing is it's such a game of fairness. Now that they had a better round, they're at 155, we're still at 125, and the round just goes up and down. So there's been times where I've been down 5,000 points and you wind up winning by 6,000 points. So it's such an interesting way of, going back and forth. People were asking about keeping cards in hand. As you saw, that partner of the bot was stuck. Not only do you want to keep at least pairs in hand, but you never want to be stuck with 1 when you haven't completed 2 canastas, or at least close to completing that second canasta.
Yep. Okay.
So now I think we'll wrap up here. We are going to send out an email. If you're not on our email list for some reason, if you registered for this, if you send us an email at modernamericancanasta@gmail.com, we'll make sure to send it out to you. And also if you go to, let me see, it's canasta. It's so funny. If you ever see those memes where they say, I was this year old when I learned. So con, like Comic Con, it stands for convention. My husband's like, oh, that's what it stands for. So Canasta Con, Canasta Convention 25 is the link to get all the information. You could fill out things there to register. and then follow up with payment by either Zelle or PayPal. And if you have any questions about it, just send us an email. We are going to be doing strategy, presentation, social gaming, breakfast and lunch, and then the second day tournament for cash prizes. And we are not done with our Zooms. We did just wrapped up for both Kveller and AARP. And we are in talks with Kveller to come back and do another series online with them for strategy. So let us know. Send us,
Hopefully AARP.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we do our own strategy things from time to time. But come meet us in New York, folks. Thanks for joining us. If we haven't answered your questions, I saw something pop up in the chat. Just send us an email or post it on our Facebook group, and we will be happy to answer you. And this, our special hand with pairs, no, we couldn't have gotten that. We didn't have the right cards. We had sevens. We didn't have, when you pull a joker in and you're going for a special hand, that's when you say, ugh, because there's only 3 other jokers and maybe the other team has used them. So
yeah, and one wrap-up tip on that note is watch your body language and your facial expressions, because if you're going for a special and you pick a joker, everybody could tell she was one away from a special and she just ruined it by picking a joker, or he was, because people pick it and they go. So it's really important to kind of take from other games and try not to give away information. As a little quick aside, if you also play mahjong, I am doing a 3-part series with Kveller on strategy. It's intermediate and strategy, and I just put the link in there. And for those of you who play mahjong and are excited about the new card, we are doing a card review, and it's let's see, it is bit.ly 2025
April 7th? Is it
April 7th? Thank you.
You know what, we'll put it in the follow-up email also. Yes. We'll
So
put all of
there's
that
the
in the
link.
follow-up email too.
So thank you so much for spending your Sunday night with us. We hope you learned something. Thanks for
Great.
your
We hope-
support. Have a
We'll
great
just say
night.
bye for now. We look forward to hearing from you and maybe meeting some of you in person. Yes, and our 2nd anniversary. How
Thank you.
exciting. Bye for now.
Have a good night.